Thank all of our musicians again, our singer. Thank you. So as I began last week, we started the sub-theme for the month, which is the practice of being uncomfortable. And as much as we like being comfortable, it's truly by being uncomfortable that we grow, right? So I mean, think about a baby when it learns to walk. It falls down a whole bunch of times, right? That's certainly not comfortable. And yet, if we never stepped out and tried to do that, we'd never learn to walk. In fact, if we didn't try to do so many of the things that we don't know how to do, and risk failing and risk looking foolish, if we never were uncomfortable, we would probably never really learn or expand or get to know anything. And the chances are that anything new that we do, we probably might fail at it and might look like we don't know what we're doing. I was listening to an interview with Oprah, and she said that she's done thousands of interviews. And as soon as the interview was over and the cameras turned off, she said it didn't matter who I had interviewed. If it was a president or a film star or a musician or a housewife, didn't matter. They would turn to her as soon as those cameras went off and say, "Did I do okay? Did I do okay?" We all want to look like we know what we're doing, and we all want to be seen and heard and step out into our discomfort, but expand in that. So the only way to grow and expand is by trying new things and moving into the practice of being uncomfortable. So my question to you is, what have you done lately that's outside of your comfort zone? Louise, you're way outside of your comfort zone. I know, you're moving to a whole new state. And it's scary, isn't it, when you step out of your comfort zone. And yet, again, how many of us stay within that space of comfort, of routine? In Alaska, where it snows a lot, I heard that there was a sign on a road, because the roads are obviously snow-covered, and the wheels will make ruts in the road, and the sign said, "Choose your rut carefully, because you might be in it for the next 50 miles. And the truth is, don't we need to choose our rut carefully, because we might be in it for the next 50 years, right? You know, there's a lot of talk lately about people who have left their children in their car seats and forgot to drop them off at daycare. And people say, how in the world could somebody do something like that? And I think what happens is we get into this automatic rut, we get into this automatic movement, and we're not conscious of what we're doing. We're not conscious of what's going on. Have you ever had a day off and you get in your car and your car automatically starts driving to work? And it happen to anybody? Nah, never. Or sometimes you arrive at your destination and you're like, whoa, how'd I get here? And so we move into this comfortable place of doing the same things over and over again without having conscious awareness many times. So I want to look today in the practice of being uncomfortable and look at churches and our own lives, of course. But 501 years ago, Martin Luther nailed the 19 Theses on the door. I think of the Catholic Church, I'm sure. Where did he nail it? Anyway, he was upset about the indulgences that the Catholic Church was selling, and he was upset about a lot of things that the Catholic Church was doing. And he created this Reformation that started the Church of England and Lutheranism and Unitarianism, and all started to grow out of that. And it was a massive change because it broke the hold that the Catholic Church had at that time, right? You had to go to your priest, you had to go to the Pope, you had to go through this one process, and there was one way to do it. And Martin Luther broke that whole thing. So the Reformation changed everything. But the truth is, when we look back over the last 500 years, maybe the last 600 years, we've been doing church pretty much the same for the last 500 years, don't you think? I mean, we have our pews, and if we go to Europe at an old church, we'll find the pews, and the room looks the same, and it's kind of the same process, if you will, of worship. And it's no secret that many churches across America and across Europe are dying because the old format needs to change. When I was in Denmark last year, I was talking to a tour guide who happened to be from New Jersey, but he was married to a woman in Denmark, and he was, anyway, he asked me what I did for a living, and I said I was a minister, and he said, the ministers in Denmark are paid by the government. And I said, really? Wow, how does that work? And he said, well, basically, the ministers do the weddings and the funerals and the christenings. He goes, but nobody really goes to church on Sunday. So even in Europe. So it was an interesting concept. It's like, wow, so people get their kids christened, but then they don't come back later during the week or on the Sunday. So anyway, this brings us to our new building, right? So because we're changing the building, we are forcing a change on ourselves. And in some ways, what we're doing is we're pouring new wine, and hopefully not into old wineskins, but we're taking new wine and hopefully pouring it into new wineskins, right? As Pat Forrest read for us in the reading this morning, she shared the scripture from Matthew chapter 9, when Jesus said, if you pour new wine into old wineskins, it's going to burst because the old wineskin gets stiff and brittle. And when our consciousness, when our thinking is stiff and brittle, and we bring in new life and we bring in new thoughts, if we're not pliable, it could just kind of go kaplooey, can kind of just go wherever. So Emily Cady talked to this same process in her book, Lessons in Truth, where she said, there was a chapter on chemicalization that was later taken out because everybody was using the word chemicalization as an excuse for everything that was going wrong in their lives. So what is chemicalization? She says, have you ever put soda in sour milk, cider, or other acid fluid and witnessed the agitation and excited action that takes place? One of the substances neutralizes the other, and something better results from the action. So what she's saying is that, so if you're new to the New Thought Movement or Unity, or if you're new to the 12-step program, any of those things that is improving your life and changing how you're thinking and being, she said many times you'll find that everything's great at first, right? It's like, wow, experiences of prosperity and things are just lining up. And she said, and then all of a sudden you'll find perhaps you're having some heavy-duty financial challenges, or maybe you're having some heavy-duty relationship challenges, and you're thinking, what the heck? Does this stuff work or not? And what she said is, it's the process of the old and the new coming together, and there's this agitation that's happening so that something else can come from it that's even better. She says, what has happened? There has been a clash between the old condition and the new. Now, this agitation does not always take place with everyone, but it's most apt to occur with those who have been most fixed or solidified in their old beliefs. Old wineskin, right? What's old wineskin? It's brittle, it's stiff, it's fixed, and it's in the way it is. And then when we get new ideas, it causes this chemicalization. So has that ever happened to you where you're like, maybe it's a new diet or a new program that you started, and you start off with gangbusters, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, things start moving and shaking. So the idea is not to give up on it. The idea is to know that something new is being created. And is it uncomfortable? Probably. Will something better emerge from this? Most likely. So it brings me back to the building. What was interesting to me is when we first started doing the design and the planning and the brainstorming around the new building, we were basically taking new wine and putting it into old wineskins, because we were taking everything that we love about this building and we're putting it in another one. We're going to have a chapel and a bookstore and the tapestries and the library and it's youth ed, and we're going to do it like this. And then we looked and we went, guess what? It's not going to fit because we're going to right size, we're going to be more energy efficient. And so we were trying to take what was or what is and make it into what will be. So this church was built in 1959, and it was built with a lot of intention and a lot of prayer and a lot of forethought. And this is a sacred place, and there are sacred objects to us here. Every single person has some special meaning, right? I mean, Johnny and Terry, you guys met here. I don't know if people know that, but you've been married for 20-some years, and you met here. And think about the things that you've had to let go of when you moved, right? So my house, those of you who are Facebook friends with me have seen this, but the house in which I grew up is gone. It was torn down. And now I haven't lived there for many, many years, but still, we lived there for 20 years. My grandparents lived upstairs, and every time I was in Chicago, I would do a walkthrough through the old neighborhood because I still know a lot of people that live there. And because of the way the neighborhood is changing and things are changing, like here, they took a wrecking ball to it, and someone in the neighborhood took a picture, and my house was like half there. It was like the second floor was gone, and it was a very strange feeling. Anybody have that feeling where you've gone back and maybe where your house is, there's a parking lot or something now, or something's totally different? And it was a very strange feeling for me to have that place be gone. Now, does it really matter? Not really, but there was a loss there. There was a sense of history because I know that street so well. I know every crack in the sidewalk. I know every sound that the L train makes and how often it comes by. And all that now is gone, right? It's gone. And as we go through this process with the building, let's multiply that by hundreds of people, by how many people here who are connected to this building and to this ministry. Multiply what I'm feeling, they tore down my house. Wait a minute, you're going to tear down my spiritual sanctuary? You're going to tear down my spiritual home? So it brings up all kinds of feelings, brings up all kinds of stuff that we need to embrace with kindness and compassion and recognize that there's new wine, but where's it going? Is it going to go into an old wineskin where it's all brittle and stiff, or is it going to be new and fresh? So, as we proceed with the design, guess what? The construction costs are going up. Big shocker, anybody? The construction costs are going up, and so what we envisioned, even what's in the library right now, has changed, and we've had to downsize even more, and that's a scary thought. It's a scary thought. And so there's a couple of ways that we can approach this, right? We can approach it with the new wine and the old wineskins and argue with reality, but the truth is, if church has been the same for the past 500 years, why don't we want to change it and see that this is a blessing? So the fact that we have a new facility coming is challenging us, and it begs us to ask the question, how can we do church differently, right? How can we do church differently? Not like we've done it for the last 500 years, and guess what? We're being forced to learn how to do church in a different way, as are many other communities and congregations. So, what if we had church on Saturday night? What if we had it on Sunday afternoon and Sunday morning, and the youth services had it, the teenagers met Sunday night? I mean, there's this opportunity for some great brainstorming and some great creativity to start to come through us as we go through this process. Diane sent me an article. Diane's in ministerial school right now, and sent me an article about this whole topic about how church is changing. And one church, I think they were down to 18 people or something like that. And they had enough money where they probably were going to last for another 3 years. And they're like, okay, so what are we going to do? Let's do something absolutely radical. And so what they decided to do is reinstate the Sabbath. So every second and fourth Sunday, the community has agreed that they will honor the Sabbath. That means they don't come to church, even that. They don't get on their cell phones, their computers, television, errands, any work. They actually rest. And during the second and fourth Sunday on Saturday night, they have a Sabbath service that prepares them to move into silence. So now this is 6 years later, and they're not going to grow into a mega church. They're not growing into a mega church, but their attendance now, they've grown to like 100 and something. And everyone honors that, and they feel refreshed and renewed. And they found a new way to be in spiritual community. They found a new way to worship together. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And we play with it sometimes on Sundays, where we'll do like a meditation walk, or we break off into groups and we talk, or we try different things. And so what I'm asking all of us in this community is that we all be new wineskins, because we're getting the new wine, right? And that rather than being brittle and stiff and, oh my God, this is going to break me, is what is this new life that's coming into us, and how can we best express it? How can we best live it? How best can we be it? And not just for ourselves, but I think for the unity movement. I think that we're pioneers in so many different ways, that we can step forward into this new land and this new territory. And so what about you in your personal life, right? We're talking about community. But how in your life have you been trying to put new wine into old wineskins? Is there any area of your life where this is happening? Because anything in your mind that is stiff and rigid will not accept the new wine, will not accept new ideas, will not accept new ways of being. And what is it that you've done lately to step outside of your comfort zone? I mean, maybe you just need to drive home by a different route, right? So the truth is that we are amazing beings, and we have this capacity to grow and to expand and to change and to pioneer and to be so many different things. And I want to share with you a piece that Debbie Ward gave me this week, and I don't know the author of it. But if anyone is facing a challenge right now and you're not sure if you have it in you to face this, hear these words. You come from a long line of people who have beaten the odds. You came from people who survived the plague, who survived slavery, who by definition survived World II, World War I, the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, the Inquisition, and the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. You came from people who crawled out of caves and created civilization, and we come from an incredible lineage. We often adjudicate this legacy and say, but I'm just a kid from the suburbs, I'm just a kid from the inner city, what do I know? Well, maybe you are. But you're also a child of the frontier. You're also a child of survivors. You are also a child of immigration, a child of survivors of war, survivors of slavery. So never doubt what you can do. This ancestors that we have that are coursing through our bodies right now, that are coursing through our DNA, are calling us to change and expand in so many different ways. So I'd like us to take a moment to go into prayer. So I invite you to turn your attention within as we hear the words again of Jesus. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away, making the tear worse. If they do, neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst, the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. They pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved. So what is the new wine that is coming into your life? What is the new life? The creativity, the expression, the ideas. And imagine that you are the embodiment of a new wineskin, that you are pliable, that you are soft, that you are open, as this experience of fermentation and change that's taking place not only within you, but within this community and within the world is rising to the surface so that something better may emerge. And you are not here by accident. You are here by divine appointment in this community and in this world. And so we do affirm this in the name and through the power of the living Spirit of truth, and it is so. Amen.
You're broken down and